And we are back, Gmac Winnie, coming at you with another edition of the Outlaw Blitz interview podcast. Big fella, let's get dangerous.
Dangerous indeed. In the house tonight with us, Ulster County Sheriff Juan Figueroa. Sheriff Figueroa, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, gentlemen, and I'm glad to be here at the Outlaw Blitz, which is perfect because I'm a nonconformist.
So we've been trying for the last couple of months, but scheduling issues, but we're out of the way. We got you here tonight. Nice dreary day in upstate New York. Get us started, Gina.
So you took over as a sheriff in 2018. Well, election was 2018. Your first year was 2019. We know that, right? We know sheriff. We got to go back to you moved up here from New York City when you were 12, 13 years old. Kind of walk us through what it's like becoming, an Ulster County resident from New York City.
So we actually been coming up even before that. So Plattekill is an area that was called, and I'll say it, some people might get offended, I don't. They called it Puerto Rico. And it was the Spanish Alps. So there were all these famous musicians and venues that people would charter buses every summer because they couldn't afford to go back, to Europe, to Spain or the Caribbean. So that's how my family ended up here. We, on my mother's side, she had people that own one of the villas down there. So even though we moved up in 77, we were coming up since I was a little kid. And I love the country. Love the fresh air, love the trees. Just to me, it was like a big adventure every summer to come up here for a couple of weeks. And I was born in Manhattan, and I actually said that a lot on the campaign trail. People wanted to know, well, where were you born? I'm like, I was born on an island. It's called Manhattan. And obviously not Puerto Rico, but it was a unique challenge as a kid, though, because you came from I was at junior high school, Herman Ritter Junior High School, 98 in the Bronx, of ninth grade. And, mainly African-Americans and, Puerto Ricans, Latinos, and we didn't get along with each other. So there were some serious fights and brawls, and then to come up to Walk Hill Senior High School in Ulster County, where there's like maybe 5 or 6 African-Americans and about 15 Latinos, culture shock, to say the least. It was culture shock. So it took me a little while to get used to it. Was
that part of the reason you moved upstate, was because of the problems in the city, or did your dad get a job, or your parents get a job up here? Or? No,
the money was in the city. Ironically, a lot of people I went to high school with, their parents worked in the city. So my father commuted every day, worked at Lenox-Hill Hospital. We were all born at Lenox-Hill Hospital, so he could just on his break go up and visit mom and the newborn baby. So we, it was challenging, but they wanted a better life for us. I remember one day I was really ticked off because this, like I said, it was culture shock. My dad's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "I want to go back to the Bronx. I thought you loved it up here." I'm like, "Well, I do, but the school is not what I'm used to." He goes, "Well, get used to it because that's the way the rest of the country is. And it's nothing like in the Bronx where it's just African Americans and Latinos. The rest of this country is Walk Hill High School." And in hindsight, looking back, he was so right and changed my life. And here I am sitting, after 25 years in the state police, and I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, 22 years, both active and reserve in the Marine Corps, retired from there as well. We got to see the world, and it was because we moved up here.
Did you play any sports in high school or anything like
that? I played baseball. I'm Puerto Rican, man, of course. I played baseball, softball. I'm not that tall, so I didn't play a lot of basketball, although I have a mean junk game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And I got a sharp elbow. But those were mainly the sports that I played growing up.
So you go to Walk Hill High School, culture shock. How do you go from, being kind of a rebel rouser, as you'd say yourself, to I need the discipline of the military? What was that? How did that happen?
I needed structure. Like most of us back then in the 80s, there were, my first summer job at 16 was at Fairwright Electronics in Walk Hill. and I was making good money for a young kid. It was like $225 a week. That's a lot of money for, a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah, it's solid.
And so, I wanted to do something different. And the high school, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but my mom and dad had passed already. When I got sworn in by John Lenio. John Lenio was my high school teacher, who's Ukrainian, by the way. And John Lenio at Fridays would have current events days. And he, back then we only had 6 channels on television, not like the 500 channels we have on TV
but
now.
Still nothing to watch.
And so, I would watch PBS News. It was just, evening news, because there was no spin to it. They just told you the news, what was happening. You make up your own mind. And so Mr. Lenio one year decided he wanted to have a mock trial. So I was a defense attorney, and there was a young lady named Kathy O'Connor. And then the defense attorney was a gentleman by the name of Joe. What's his name? I want to say DiNardo, but I don't think that's it. But anyway, he came in with a suit and tie and a leather suitcase. I came in with sweats and jeans on. And basically they pulled the jury from study hall. And the foreman was his best friend. And by the way, he ended up being an FBI agent. He's a bigwig now up in Boston somewhere. And I won the case. I shouldn't have won the case. And Mr. Lenny was like, wow, you should really think about doing something in law. And the rest is history. So thank you, Mr. Lenio.
Well, that's a great story, and it's great for a teacher too, because how many teachers encourage somebody to do something that they probably would have never thought of otherwise?
Right.
And that was one of those moments.
It was.
So you win that, and then you say, I'm going to go in the Marines.
1983.
Was it GI Bill?
No, well, it was a combination.
Did that factor in it all?
It was a combination of things. You remember the economy was terrible in the early 80s. There were no loans to go to school. They would look at your parents, how their credit is, and if their credit wasn't good, they weren't going to give you a loan for school. And so that played a role into it. And it was October of 83 with the bombing of Beirut, and the Marines really set up a fire in my stomach. I'm like, that's not right. We're going out there to make peace, and this happens to these poor guys. So what ends up happening is I joined the Marine Corps. And had I known, I wouldn't have joined so early, because I go into boot camp December 5th, but the platoon doesn't get picked up till January.
Oh.
So why did they tell me that? I would have joined in January.
Yeah.
But I joined the Marine Corps, and I loved it. I jumped out of planes. I've been to Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Europe. I did Desert Seal, Desert Storm. I got to see the world. There's no way I could afford that if it wasn't for being in the Marine Corps, and it really changed my perspective. I got promoted 10 times, and I walked out of there at the 22 years as a Chief Warrant Officer 3, which is a pretty big deal for me, small time guy from the Bronx.
Right. And you came in as an enlisted guy.
That's right.
So you had to go all the way up and then
That's
over.
right. So I made it up to Master Sergeant, which is E8. So I took a pay cut to become a commissioned officer, and then but I loved it. I loved every minute of it. My main role was multitasking, kind of like what I'm doing now.
Right. Never slowing down.
No,
just always keeping going.
Always on the move.
So you get through high school, you go into the Marines, you're active for a few years, I'd imagine.
I did 4 years, and then I got hired by the Connecticut State Police and the New York State Police. And I decided that I was going to go with the New York State Police because I'm from New York. Right. And good thing I did, because that Connecticut class got laid off.
Oh.
Yeah. But it was also a smaller class. And my mentality was, well, they're hiring 300 in the state police. I could hide better in there than I can.
Instead of 20. Yeah,
right. Instead of like 90 people. So, I started as a trooper right here in Kingston, Ulster County, and did 6 years. It was an instructor at the academy, was an FTO, and I got promoted. Did undercover work. Mainly, the majority of my career was special investigations, which I absolutely loved. There was some long hours, weekends. Even when I was on vacation, I'm calling up to find out the status of the case. Obsession. That's what it was. It was an obsession. And but I loved every minute of it, though. I did. And I do it all over again.
So, I mean, you come out, were you a MP in the Marines or anything like that?
No. I was a operations logistics guy.
Okay.
And
then what'd you do? You just took a test for the state police? Is
I
that
took
what
the
it was?
test for the state
As
police.
you're getting out, kind of thing?
Actually, about a year before getting out, then they put me on a military list. So they says, hey, 6 months before you get out, send us a letter and then we'll hire you and put you in the class. So I was on a waiting list, a military waiting list.
Okay. And back then, there was like a stigmatism. You had to be like 6 foot tall to be a state trooper, right?
Well,
That was kind of like the thing.
there was a lawsuit, and they had already the person who sued, they already won that. So, I was 6'5", but I jumped out of planes, and
then it knocked you down to where we are
Every
now.
time you land.
Yeah. Your back's just really compressed.
That's it. Chiropractor's dream.
I was always, though, as a little guy, I was always fighting. I was always
Well, you have to.
the underdog. I was always, making a point to be in a position where I can, not to push people per se, but to understand that, just because we're short people doesn't mean we can't do the job. You can't go to jump school. You're not going to get your wings. I got my wings. You're not going to be a state. You're not going to make it out of the State Police Academy 6 months. Well, I did. And, those are challenges. One quick story that explained me. And the Marine Corps, which is great. There's people from all over the country. Remember, there were like 5 or 6 channels back then, not like 500. And we were depicted a certain way. And there's this kid who had to be like 6'7" next to me in boot camp, and tall guy. And I was like, he was like scared, like shaking. When I'm like, why are you so scared? I'm like 5'5". I'm like, what are you scared about? Wow, I seen what you people in on television and black people always. I'm like, what? First of all, I'm Puerto Rican. He goes, where's that? So I had to explain to him what it was. So I went to Okinawa. The majority of the bosses, believe it or not, were African American, and they put all the white guys and the Latino guys on the shit details. And then when I come back to North Carolina, it was opposite. All the bosses were white, so all the Latinos and black guys got all the shit details. So there's this one Marine
So
sergeant.
either way, you got the shit.
I got screwed.
Regardless.
The story of my life. Hence why I'm a nonconformist. But so anyway, that there's a formation. He says, empty the shit can. So, and I'm like, well, there's people that are junior to me here. He's like, that's not what I said. I said, empty the shit cans. So I emptied the shit cans. And he did it every formation, and I felt he was trying to demean me. And I said, you know what? I got up at 5 a.m, and I just did it when nobody was up. I'm more 4:30 because 5 o'clock is when we went running. And I just did it every single morning. And one morning he realized, who's emptied the shit cans? I'm like, I am, Sarge. And then he looks over to the other guy. All right, from now on, you're doing it. So he pointed it out to somebody else. It wasn't that I had an issue with authority, but it was a little bit of that.
Well, I'm going to show you.
You took the power away from him by doing it. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
100%.
Exactly. So
what was the transition like for you to go from Marine to state police?
Well, I was already in shape. I was a running fool, so that wasn't it. My biggest fear was the academic side of it. A lot of the because you didn't need a college degree back then, but there were a lot of folks that were in the academy that did have a college degree. So I thought I was gonna, all I had to do was maintain. I walked out of there, I think, with a 87 average, so I did okay. But that was always a concern of mine, that the transition. The other part of that is life in general. I mean, things happen in family, in the areas that you work at or where you live at. And because you're related to somebody, they look at you like, all right, you must be part of them because you're family of them, because this person does something wrong and they have your same last name. So I had to deal with that too. And that was at the time of the affirmative action push for the state police. And they were always asking me, what was your score? What was your score? I'm like, score? You got to take tests to come on to state police? Yogi Bear picked me up in the Bronx, gave me a uniform, dropped me off at Kingston. And they were like, stop being a smart ass, Juan. But that was a lot. There was I remember coming up the stairs, and there was a boss who was just looking at me, and he says to me, he goes, boy, this job's going to shit. And I'm like, whoa. It's like, wow. I know what I'm getting into here. But I'd rather people be up front than hide it and do it behind your back. I'm fine with it. All right. The one thing they can't question about Juan Figueroa is his work ethic. You're never gonna. You could say what you want, but you can't question my work ethic. I'm gonna do the best that I can to get the job done, and that's what got me over that hump the first 4 or 5 years in the in the state police. And when I got promoted to investigator, I was an undercover. Matter of fact, right here in Ulster County, mainly in the Hudson Valley. And I had a lot of fun. I did, I speak Spanish, so I had to do a lot of Spanish wiretaps throughout the state, whether it was Binghamton, Buffalo, Albany, New York City. So I did a lot of that as well. And when I transferred to the Special Investigations Unit in 96, 97, I had the time of my life. It was incredible. Such a higher echelon type of work. If you don't know what the State Police Special Investigations Unit is, I would say it's kind of like the CIA to State Police. We did everything, but putting bugs in offices or businesses. I mean, you name it. It was so much fun, and I enjoyed it very much.
Now, was that department involved at all in investigating anything in 9/11? Any of the 9/11 stuff? Were you
Interesting you bring up 9/11. My father died September 4th, 2001.
Before.
And my mother years later says to me that he probably died to save me because I would have been down there. So the day that 9/11 died, my girlfriend had called me up. She goes, "Are you watching television?" I was going to take my mom down to the 1199 Union headquarters in Manhattan so she could do the paperwork for the funeral that we just did for my dad. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And I looked, and as soon as I put it on, the second plane hit the second tower. So I told my mom, we're not going to the city. And I called my boss, Lieutenant McKenzie, and I said, sir, I'm going to come down. He goes, no, you're not. You're not coming down here. Don't come down. I'm ordering you to stay home. So I didn't go down there. Again, my mom says afterwards, when she was dying, that she felt that was because my father was trying to protect me. Who knows? Only God knows.
Right. Yeah. But that would be something that they investigated. That
sure. Well, we went down to help. It was complete chaos. It got to the point where nobody knew who was down there, and they needed to kind of take a hold. So they told everybody, stop coming down until we ask you to come down. So the state police sent every agency in the tri-state area. There were fire departments that came from all over the East Coast, all over the country, really, to help out. And we all know what happened, and people continue to die even today because they were told that the air was good and it wasn't.
Right.
So I was very fortunate and lucky that I didn't have to go down there.
So 9/11 was probably big in law enforcement, military, all kinds of different worries, right? You're still in the military at that time, correct?
I was.
And you're still in the state police. So
correct.
Now we're going to have, you're going to have deployments, both militarily and, police-wise. How did you manage that?
So I was already senior in rank, and it's weird about the reserves. Because although we're the ambassadors of the Marine Corps or any other unit that you belong to, whether it's Army, Navy, as a reservist, but they tend to go with the more junior guys when they go out to these deployments. After Desert Shield, Desert Storm in 90 and 91, when they activated whole units, they kind of pulled away from that, and they did what they call individual augments. They would get different 10 to 15 individuals from the unit to go and augment another unit, and that's how they did deployments. So, although I did get activated for Operation Iraqi Freedom, there was a captain who outranked me, who's the I&I guy. He's the instructor that was stationed at Stewart in Newburgh. He went on an advanced party, and it was his spot, and I had to stay in the rear with the gear. So I was out in California. I was down in New Orleans. We had to move these avionics vans from the aviation unit that was coming back from their deployment. Instead of moving all the equipment from San Diego in theater, they left the equipment in theater, and we had to move the equipment from San Diego to North Carolina, which was mainly done by reservists. It was they went through the Panama Canal, so it was incredible. So I had to set those type of things up. I was in support of what was going on in theater.
A lot of logistics going on.
It is. It was a lot of logistics.
But doing that, helps you do what you do now?
Absolutely. For those that work for me or know me in the Marine Corps, I'm just the S4 officer, logistics officer, as the commanding officer of the sheriff's office, because I my hands on the pulse for everything that goes on in that office with the 280 plus people that work there and the 180,000 people that we're responsible for in this county. People don't really know what you guys do and how unique the sheriff's office is. There's 57 county sheriffs elected in New York, and to be one of them is really the pinnacle and the honor of my life. And whether it's the state police or the Marine Corps, it just doesn't compare to what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that, by the way.
No,
You guys are
Absolutely.
incredible.
go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. So you're now in the middle of term 2, and from when you started till present day, what are some things that you've started that you really want to see through before it's time for Sheriff Figueroa to call it a day?
When we talked about the opioid epidemic here, but I want to talk about the crack epidemic of the 80s and how it affected even my family. And nobody really cared about those people. And today's a whole different world because the opioid epidemic affects everybody, rich, poor, white, black, doesn't matter. Starting the opioid response as county law enforcement, and now the new SAFE team, which deals with mental health issues, to me is the future of law enforcement. We went through one of the most unique times in this profession the last 4.5 years. And to sit back and look at what happened with our profession and how, this is an honorable profession. We don't do this to get rich. We do it because we want to help people and we want to hold people accountable when they do something wrong. And so it's a tough balance when you're being attacked all the time for the job that you do because someone in a different part of the country committed a crime that happened to be a cop. Now we're all at fault. We all did something. Sounds very familiar to me as a person of color. Just saying. And so that's what's so unique to me. But what I am seeing now with all the changes, and we talked about the medical assistant treatment program. We spoke about, the opioid response to county law enforcement, where we're putting people into rehab and helping families. But at the same time, we've had the biggest drug seizures and arrests in the history of this county. So we're doing it all. But what's absolutely. But what's unique is this: instead of, arrest, next arrest, next arrest, next arrest. We're not doing that as much anymore. Now it's arrest. All right, let's look at this. How can we make this better? How can we improve ourselves? And how can we help people? That wasn't the case before. And that's something that we're doing now in my 36 years in law enforcement. I've never saw that before. And we're doing that now.
Recidivism was one thing that was never really addressed when it came to substance abuse. It was, okay, you committed this crime, come in, do your 90 days, 1 year, whatever, and now you're returned right back to the same street that you left from. And 6 months later, a year later, you might be back for the same exact cause.
Or you might be dead.
Or you might be dead.
Right.
2 days later, they would leave and they'd be dead.
Right.
And I get a phone call, Sheriff, another one left the jail that's dead. So we had to change how we did it. Some of it, look, I'm a human being. I talked about the crack epidemic. I talked about maybe I didn't, but close to 20 years in the field of narcotics. So this is new to me too. If you look at my office and my wall, you see all these kilo seizures and cash seizures, and here we are doing a MAP program out of jail, and doing opioid responses county law enforcement because we kept doing the same thing over and over and over again. We had to change it. It was what the people wanted, and in a way, for being in this field for so long, we had to try something different.
Was that one of the factors that drew you out to run for sheriff? Because Highland kind of skipped over that whole part. Like, right. You did the state police, you tried being retired, you retired from the military. How? And that's kind of where we missed.
Yeah.
So what drew you to? So that's a great question. I was in the corporate world for 5 years.
Okay.
After I retired, after my mom died, I got a job with the Hertz Corporation. I did corporate security.
Like OJ? He was a Hertz guy.
That's right.
Yeah, he was a Hertz guy. Hertz almost developed it, but it was corporate security. So I had the Northeast, New York, Connecticut, and I had the Caribbean because I speak Spanish. And man, that was a busy job. And every time I flew somewhere, it was, connecting flights. I would lose my luggage, and that kind of got old. I've commuted to New York City for 24 years, 19, 6 up here, but 19 with the state police, and then 5 with the Hertz Corporation. And I was just getting a little burnt out with the traveling. But I still felt that I had something to give. That had I known, and I'm gonna just put this out there, had I known that bail reform and all this stuff, anti-law enforcement sentiment, the opioid epidemic, the pandemic, budget cuts, the potential part of layoffs. If I knew all of that was going to happen, I don't think I would have done it. Right. It's just, who knew what was over the horizon?
Right. But what drew you to say, hey, I'm going to run for sheriff? Because like you said, there was a 3-time incumbent sheriff. He was very popular for a long period of time.
He was, and he's a good man.
And like, were you just hanging out like one day and you go, you know what?
No. So I got involved.
I'm gonna do it.
So I got involved in politics. In 2014, I ran for town judge, and I was a registered Republican. I ran as a Democrat because I felt they didn't give me an opportunity, not even a seat at the table. It was a 2-way tie. And it was a special election. I says, I'll sit for 1 year. I won't run in the next cycle, but I'll see how. It's a part-time job, and I was still working with the Hertz Corporation. And I just I felt like the door slammed on my face, and I'm like, I'm going to run anyway. And so I did. And I didn't win, of course, because it's a very red town. My town's very red. I love my town, but it's a very red town. But what it did do is open doors for other potential runs in office. And so I was approached, and at first I said, absolutely not. I know the sheriff. But then I started thinking about the time that I was in, the opportunity. And I think of my mother about, when this all happened. My mom had already passed, but she would always say, don't be afraid to take a chance on something, on a dream. Don't be afraid. And boy, this was a leap. It was a leap. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a shot because I've been in law enforcement. I was in the Marine Corps. I've seen the world. I could bring this here to my county that changed my life. I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for my parents moving us here to Ulster County. And I took a pay cut from the Hertz Corporation to come over here and be the sheriff. And it was just a way of, and I know this sounds cliche, but it's true. If it wasn't for my family bringing us up to Ulster County, I wouldn't be here. So in a way, it was about giving back the life that was given to me by coming here to Ulster County.
Kind of like destiny, ultimately.
So it was not easy because I met the undersheriff. He knew right away. I knew Eric for 30-something years. And I meet him at the Stewarts, and there's a side story on the Stewarts. But anyway, I meet him at the Stewarts, and he's looking at me and goes, they asked you, didn't they? I'm like, yeah. I said, I only have one question. Does the office need new leadership, yes or no? And he said, yes. Without even blinking an eye. And as soon as he says that,
you were in.
Undersheriff, no, I thought he was going to talk me out of it.
No. I meant when he said that, did you just
no.
knew you were all in?
At that point, I was all in, but I was hoping he was going to talk me out of it, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah. So as I'm sitting there with him, the current undersheriff and his wife pull in to the Stewarts. And I looked at him like, are you setting me up? He goes, I swear to God. I didn't know they were coming. So he retired like maybe a month after that, Mike Freer. Another good guy, played softball, the New Paltz Softball League with all those guys. And I decided at that point that I'm going to give it a shot. If I can bring something to the table and change things for the better, then why not? And that's why I decided to run.
So you go through that process, right?
Oh man,
you go from
that was a lot of work.
A pretty much an unknown, right? Because usually people run, they were, the head of this or the head of that, and then, or they were in the department, and all of a sudden we're like, who the hell's Juan Figueroa? Like, I never heard of this guy. Right.
I never even entered the building.
Right. So you go through that,
True.
and now you got to make yourself known, A, and B. you have all these guys that you're like, now you got to bridge the gap to them, correct? So what was that like after you find out like election night? Hey, we might actually win this thing, and then you do win. So like, kind of bring us through that process. Election night goes on. What happens?
The win was euphoric. I've done some things in my life that was the most this entire time. The big roller coaster ride of life. So I'm driving down the thruway because I want to get from Kingston to New Paltz. To go to Plattekill, and I literally said, "What the fuck did I just do?" I'm like, "Holy shit! What did I just do?" And I had already booked a trip, win or lose, to Europe, and my first stop was Rome. And I went to St. Petersburg that Thursday. So I went on Tuesday. Thursday, I flew to Rome, and I went to St. Peter's Basilica. I think it was Friday. And I stayed there for an hour and a half, freaking praying, saying, I hope I didn't make the biggest mistake of my life here. And I'm not going to ruin this for so many people. I didn't know you guys. Corrections was completely, I'd never done corrections. I don't know anything about corrections. So every day I walk into that building, even now, I look to the left, I look to the right, then I look up and I just hope and pray that I don't make a mistake. How did I bridge the gap? I'm so lucky with the leadership of people around me when I was in the Marine Corps and the state police that I knew exactly what I needed to do when I took off. They were saying I was going to do away with all these special details. We're gonna wear polo shirts and no uniforms anymore and no guns. I'm like, who said that? So, Democrat.
Rumor mill that just keeps turning.
So the interesting thing was that Joe Decker comes up and he says, hey, I look at the dive truck. And it was just the dive truck needed to be replaced. That thing was terrible. So Joe Decker comes up, hey, I got this great deal out in Wisconsin. It's from a fire department. It's like $90,000. And I think we should, I'm like, all right, take Joe Steyer with you because I know he's a mechanic. And go take a look at it. He goes, how are we going to do that? I'm like, take the credit card. And he's looking at me, what? I'm like, take the credit card, go and take a look at it and try to make a deal with the guy, will you?
Right.
But there was a lot to the story, but we finally got that truck. And when they drove that truck in, they looked like they were going to cry. The biggest part of that was looking at everybody's face when that truck pulled in, especially the dive and water rescue team, which is made up of pretty much everyone in the office, that, you know what? Maybe this guy isn't so bad. Maybe he is going to do something. They've been trying to get that truck for years. They've been trying to, there's so many things you were trying to do that we weren't able to do for whatever reason. But I knew that was my honeymoon year, that first year. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I'm going to get whatever I can for these guys. I'm going to do what I can. So I have to build that truck. Leadership is a two-way street. You can't be a chief where you don't have Indians. You got to have ownership. What I mean by that is ownership is making decisions for yourselves too. If you got a problem, tell me what the problem is. If you have a solution, tell me what the solution is. But don't just come in complaining without the solution because I can't help you then. Yeah. But that was a huge part of building that trust within the sheriff's office. And the very next day, I'm walking down the hallway by Como, and there's a resident from Saugerties here, Tiano. He stops me in the hallway and he goes, I've been here for a long time.
Oh, Jimmy.
Sheriff. And you've done more in 6 months than the last 20 years. I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that stuck with me. And that's what you want to hear. You want to hear those. You don't want to solicit it. You don't want to go, oh, look at me. Look what I did. No, nobody wants showboats like that. What you want is you want to be able to show people that you care. You want to make a positive change. All the bosses were embedded there forever. It was time for a change. And by the way, even though there is time for a change, when I decide to leave, whenever that is, I believe it needs to go back to a member of the Ulster County Sheriff's Office and not an outsider. It's okay to have an outsider every now and then, but I believe it should go back. And why? Because what we went through the last 5 years, I feel obligated that it should be somebody from within. But how can that be when the previous administration never got a raise for this position? Most of you guys last year, you probably made more than me. And so you can't ask someone to take more responsibilities and take a pay cut.
Right.
And so the only way it can be from an insider is that we adjust the payrolls all the way around, all the way around.
So I mean that's a point of contention, right? Especially with, you saw it here. The Saugerties police chief was gonna think about tossing his hat in the ring a couple years ago, and then they brought their pay up, and he's like, it doesn't make sense for me to go run for sheriff.
It's It's a $20,000 pay cut,
right? So how? I'm just trying to be nice to all parties here. How is it? How do we rate salary wise comparatively to our neighboring counties? I mean, like Greene County, you got to kind of cut that off because they're not in the same population status as us. But like you base us against Orange County or Dutchess County, I don't think we measure up. And
well, you measure up, you don't make enough money.
Well, no, I mean, financially, we don't.
So I mean, the issue is tax base. Like, what is our tax base compared to Dutchess County, who's got all those malls and businesses, or Orange County, who's got like 5 or 6 cities down there? You know, I mean, they have a higher, tax base. However, we're a much bigger county with unique problems, and you're so far behind them. We keep losing people to go down there. It's a rotating door, and the only way to change, and get good people is that you got to pay them. There's ultimately a difference if you pay a cop in Louisiana or San Juan, Puerto Rico, $19,000 a year, and the drug dealer is going to pay him $60,000 a year. Right. No brainer for those people down there. Unfortunate, but it's about money.
Right.
When you pay somebody $150,000, they're going to do a great job. They're not going to do anything wrong. They're going to do what's right because it's a great paying job with great benefits. The retirement system, Tier 6, is a joke. It's an absolute joke. I was at Tier 2. So after 20 years, every year after 20 years, I get 1/60th. When I retired at 25 years. I bought time from the Marine Corps through to my pension. I walked out with almost 65% of my pay. Those were incentives, though, that kept me working. Right. You need to incentivize the jobs that we had. And Tier 6 was a disaster for everyone. And that's why no one's taking these jobs.
The one thing that's hard to address now in contract negotiations is, like you said, the tax base in these other counties. But the cost of living in Ulster County is just as high now as it is in Dutchess or Orange.
Absolutely.
So you have to provide the income.
And we're spending a lot of money training these guys, and they head down south.
Right.
Someone else. That's nobody even talking about that training money that goes out the door when we lose somebody. There's thousands of dollars that we lose.
So is that one of the biggest issues your department as a whole is facing right now? Is A, retention, and B, recruitment? Because I mean, if you're on Facebook, if you're on the highway, you see, hey, we're hiring corrections officers. We're hiring. I mean, the recruitment process, you know the stats. I've heard you saying you've hired 35 people in the last year.
33, yeah.
But we're
10 left.
But then you're minus still compared to where you were a year ago, right, between retirements and people leaving for higher paying jobs.
Right.
So how do we combat that? How does the county combat that? I know there's about to be a new contract. Is that a big part of your
it is
your deal right now?
You look at the mandatory overtime that you guys are going through; it's through the roof because we don't have the manpower, the staffing levels that are required by law to keep and maintain staffing positions and posts at the Ulster County Jail. And everyone has the same problem as we do. Albany County, all the other surrounding counties, and you're right. The cost of living here is no different than it is. That's a great point than Dutchess and Orange County when you live here in Ulster County. If you and throw on the mandatory overtime during the pandemic, we couldn't work from home. We had to come in and work.
Nope. Jails don't close.
Right.
Sheriff's departments don't
That's
close.
Right. And say office, don't say department.
Yeah,
Sheriff's office does not close.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about that one later. Okay. So do you call it the district attorney's department? No, because it's an elective office. And we're not department heads. Like, we don't work for the county executive. We work for the people of the county. You all work for the people of the county. Of course, the county executive has a big role because she controls a lot of money, and the legislature is the overview and the oversight. But we're definitely in office, and the work that you do, the training that you're getting, the innovative programs that you're all doing. That's what this is to me. That's what makes us different than Dutchess in Orange County. We're doing what the people are telling us to do. But yet, once we get our folks trained up, they leave to go make $20,000-$30,000 more. They're making over $100,000 a year just south of our county here. And how can we retain people at that rate?
It's kind of bizarre when you look at a 5-year correction officer in Orange County makes more than a 20-year lieutenant in Ulster County.
Incredible.
And jails are the same size. Granted tax base, but like he said, you look at it and you're like, how does this make sense after we just put all this training in?
Right.
We put all this training in these people.
When if you simplify it just down to the job, 250 incarcerated individuals, whether it's in the Ulster County Jail, the Orange County Jail, the Dutchess County Jail, it's the job. It's the same job.
Absolutely. It is the same job. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that you guys get the pay raises that you deserve.
Do you think there's some incentive for the state to adopt a 20-year retirement for correctional officers?
Absolutely. All these jobs are 20-year jobs.
Just like the military, right?
Listen, how many times do you hear people, as soon as they retired, 2 months later, boom, they're dead. It's because of the stagnant life, whether you're sitting in the car doing surveillance or sitting at the jail. It's a tough job. Nobody wants to do these jobs. The anti-law enforcement sentiment, the pandemic, the hiring freezes, we're still suffering from all that. And it's the hangover effect. And the truth is, these are tough jobs. But no one has pensions anymore. We still do.
Right.
And to me, this should, and I've been to Albany, and I said these need to be 20-year jobs. And I know that means people are going to run for the door, but it's okay to have it. It's an incentive to retire at 20 years.
Well, you were in the military, and you were in a state
20-year
police,
retirement,
and now you're
20-year
right?
retirement.
If you look at it,
right,
there's always an arc, right? Like where things are up, then they come down,
sure.
Then they recycle through, and that 20 years is like an accurate time. We can talk about other things as the HALT Act and bail reform and that, but you're taking people that were here prior to the HALT Act and you're trying to conform them to something that is completely
that's been the last
like
5
anarchy.
years.
It's like anarchy
that's been the last 5 years. Medical assisted treatment, discovery, bail reform, the HALT Act, the pandemic, the opioid epidemic, all this happening at one time. One time.
And the added mental health.
Mental health is huge.
And that's huge. This is going to segue into the next thing I wanted to ask you about is the topic of officer wellness. It's not news to anybody that we recently lost a member of our force, a good friend to a lot of us. And again, 25 years is a long time to be in any of these professions. The toll it takes on you, the mental numbness you get later on, this stuff. Like the first time I ever went out with my wife, her friends asked me, "Hey, how was your day?" And I told them a little bit about it, and they stared at me in complete awe. And I'm like, why are they looking at me in such a weird way? Because this is normal to me, but it's not normal to the average everyday folk. How do we step up our game and give everybody what they sorely need as far as mental health help, making sure that they're okay when they go home to their families at the end of the day?
So, that happened under my watch, and it was a roller coaster of emotions for me. Not the first time, and it won't be the last time that we're gonna see that, especially in our profession. But we need to look at things differently. If we need help, we need to say it. A lot of the men and women that work in this profession think that if they reach out for help that they're weak, or because we're supposed to be the people that are in charge and making decisions, and afraid to get help because they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. They're afraid of what everybody else is thinking about them. Well, if they can do it, why can't I? My first year here, we had a member that, remember, we had 20 years of of war in Afghanistan. We got a lot of reservists, and we had a member here that suffered from PTSD, and I brought him into the office from being out there, and I said, listen, either you're going to get help on your own, I'm going to order you to get help. I'd rather you go do it on your own, and I'm not going to hold anything in against you. I want you to get help. It's like a diabetic, needs insulin. It's the same thing. Nobody does the work that we do. Nobody goes into homicide scenes or accident scenes or listen to the people's stories when they come into the Ulster County Jail. All that stuff gets absorbed by the rank and file, and at the end of the day, you're just supposed to shut that off and go home. It's not human nature, unfortunately, that we can just shut. Some people get to shut that off. Some people are not. And so to me, mental health is going to be one of the biggest things that I'm going to push for this year and the rest of the time that I'm here at the Sheriff's. So I already started. Ironically, I was in Washington, D.C. The Wednesday before that happened, speaking to the senators and congressmen from both sides of the aisle, saying the importance of officer wellness. And it's well overdone. It's overdue. It's well overdue. Back in my day, we did? We drank, and boy, did I drink.
Oh, right.
Oh, man, I drank.
That's what the military does, right? They promote that.
Absolutely.
They promote, hey, go drink, go fight, do whatever.
Right.
Get it out of your system. But
I'm no angel. I was, I remember there was in Rosendale, there was a small toddler that stuck his hand in the electrical socket and then electrified himself. And when I get there, the family, it was a summer day, I could still see the mother screaming, and I'm trying to, the kid was already purple. I mean, it felt like it was 20 minutes before the ambulance got there, but it might have been 3 or 4 minutes. I'll never forget that. And things like that we see, we don't go down certain roads if we saw something bad, or, there's some people like, when I was an undercover, I seen an individual that had a syringe sticking out of his arm in the city of Newburgh in one of those heroin homes, and he had all these maggots and sores. And I can't even get an injection now. I can't even look at it because I immediately start thinking about that. And those are the small things, but the bigger things, those head-on collisions where the person's face looks like a mask because everything's gone. The homicide scenes that we all see, and then the stories of victims when you talk to them and you hear what happened to them, and you have to write and document it and then prosecute these people in jail. It has a human toll on all of us.
Right.
So
we see a lot of the violence that other people are
right.
fortunate enough to never see.
That's right.
Yeah, think of it this way: as this big strong wall, as tough as it is, if you keep throwing a little rock after a little rock, eventually you're chipping away at it, and it's going to break. They're picking up the signs, but making sure that
they get help.
It's always there when somebody needs it.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people take corrections for granted. I don't. How difficult is it when somebody commits a homicide and they're sitting at the correctional facility at the jail, and you have a connection with them, and you're like, maybe this guy isn't that bad because you're a human being, but in reality, he's terrible. But because you deal with them all the time, you have a different, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, and then you feel bad for them, or you feel bad for their family that comes and visits them because of the situation that this individual got himself and his entire family. Nobody else has to deal with that like you guys do. Nobody. Who else has to deal with that?
How do you articulate to the county, like, hey, mental health is multifaceted, right? There's a million things, and we can talk about your Ignite program here in a second. But, you talked about staffing levels and that earlier, and that's a major contribution. If you're battling any kind of demon, whatever it is, and now you're not going home, like how many people, their job is they go to work, they clock in, they know at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. they clock out, and that's it.
Right.
And now, like you said, mandatory overtime for your people, and your X amount of officers short, and you can't keep them because of financials. Those things start to add up when, what was it? People were getting, I think the lowest number was 50 times in a year. They were getting mandated. What does that do for you? I mean, what does that do to you? I know you always come in, and that's a big thing that you're always come in. You always check on us. How's the mandos? How's the mandatory overtime? How are you trying to combat that with the county? Because I know a lot of that's like, how many are they going to hire? If we have 50, it should be like, hey, hire 50. But I know they want to give them to you in 10s and 15s. Like, how do you combat
So
that?
to me, the biggest issue with that is morale. It just, you guys know, it's a tough when you're working three, double shifts in a row. It's morale. It's you're not going to be with your family, and it's not like any other job. Where like, yeah, I'm going to go home. To holiday. I'm taking it. No, it's not like that. And so that's the biggest thing I pushed to the county, especially during the pandemic. What we all went through with folks that we lost to COVID, and that how difficult and unique this job is. Throwing on top of everything that we have tried to hire people with the pilot programs last year, where the test, you just put your name down, you got a 70 on it. I mean, really,
No, I know.
we did whatever, even hiring provisionally.
Right.
We've done whatever it was that we needed to do to bring people in. There were some that came in and you right away, they're not going to survive. Right. I've gotten to the point that I can tell someone who's going to make it and want someone. On the day I'm swearing them in, I can just read them and I'm like, yeah, this guy's not, she's not going to make it. So the biggest thing for me is listening to family members when I see them and how it affects me too. When I hear them, I haven't seen my husband or my wife because it's mandatory overtime. They miss a birthday or they miss a celebration or an anniversary or a graduation. That's tough. That's tough to hear. So I'm going to do whatever I can. And I think we all together have to put our minds together to get more people to take the job. But it also hurts when guys are so burnt out that they constantly badmouth the job and to these new folks. And then they walk out the door. There was one time I was so frustrated. I think I went to the sea line and I said, guys, your mandatory overtime's walking out the door.
Right.
They're leaving, but there's also a generational difference. These kids don't want to work midnights. They don't want to work weekends.
So now you just brought up something, a generational difference, right? Now there's a lot of kids now that they don't know that college is in their future, right? I know down south they have a program where you graduate high school and you can go to a summer academy that then at the end of it you would be hired. Is that something you would possibly look into?
We would need to change the law, but some other counties are already doing it, where they're trying to get kids right out of. Remember, you can't be a peace officer, police officer until you're 21.
Right.
And so here in New York, but there's some that are doing it. They're just not. We're not giving them a gun. We're not putting them out the door.
Right.
So I am contemplating it. If it continues to be the same way it is, that we can't get enough people to hire. By the way, the test in May or June is going to be similar, and it's going to be a rotating. There's
like a
continuous, like it was like the pilot program.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same thing, and it's just going to be a continual exam because of the issues that all of us in the state have when it comes to people.
Yeah. One thing that you had said before to touch on again is we can say, listen, you can come in the door and write your check because it's pretty much that way. But trying to sell somebody on a tier 6 retirement right now, it's a tough sell at best. And like with the generational thing, like I've never seen until the last couple of years, people will come on full time, and then the Mandos kick in, and they get tired and they get frustrated, and now they're dropping back down to part-time officer because, well, screw the benefits. I'll just come and make the money when I want to make the money. It's a tough sell. And that's how we, getting it back, putting everything in a positive light. Again, the county does have to help you. You can recruit, but the money has to be there. And hopefully the state in their next tier will right some of the wrongs of tier 6.
Tier 6 needs to go. You made a valid point, and other things that we can do are stipends for certain, officer wellness or health. It happened in my previous employment when I was in the state police. They give you it was like $3,000 if you showed up and ran track, or you went to certain classes. It's part of your salary, but it's a stipend. There are different ways that we can work with the county to make this better. The state is a bigger, the 20-year retirement. I'm still going to try for that, but that's a bigger fight. Same with tier 6. Once we let that go, it's tough to get back, but it has to get real. It has to get back real. But there's other things that we can do as a county to offset that. For example, you have 10 years and you want to retain people, right? The minute you hit 10 years, you should get some sort of bonus for doing 10 years. There are ways to incentivize staying in Ulster County. In today's world, not everything is money for some of these young folks.
True.
It's true they're making $50,000 more if you go in another county, but this is a special place, Ulster County. It really is. There's a lot of great places, great schools, a great place to raise your kids. And so that's an incentive in itself. But the important thing is incentivizing to retain people here. How do we do that? And that's where I'm going to need help from you guys, from some ideas, because this year is a negotiating year. It is. You guys are real serious, by the way.
We grew.
Did I say you got really big hands, man?
Yeah, Mitch. We grew up in the generation of our fathers, our families went to work and then probably went to job number 2, and nobody bitched or complained. They went and made the money because that's what they did. And I noticed it's again a generational thing, and maybe it's not a shame on them. It's prioritizing. They have put a lot more priority on personal life and family, and a lot of them chose to prioritize that first. Listen, I wish I could do that, but got to make the money. Right. There has to be a balance. At one point in our careers, we had that balance. It swayed the other way. We just got to continue to work to get that.
And I'm going to do what I can to get it back. That I can promise you. One thing, a lot of these the bosses in the sheriff's office will tell you that to me the most important thing is family. Family's first. And I retired. And somebody else has my shield number right now. I was a line number. See where I'm getting at here?
Right.
So family to me is very, very important. Look, I love my job. Don't get me wrong. I think we all love what we do, what we bring to the table, the experiences. We sell ourselves short. I got that job in the corporate world. I was the first trooper that they hired. It was all NYPD on lockdown. And they were like, well, who do you know? I'm like, Indeed.com. I don't know anybody. But kind of like when I ran for sheriff, I don't know anybody.
Right.
But your worth ethic speaks for itself. Your sincerity speaks for yourself. Your life experiences speak for yourself. And we sell ourselves short. You think at the end of your 20, 25-year career that, I don't have anything to give. We're all wrong. We have so many things that you have learned in your lifetime and your experiences that you can give. Look at the kids that are working now.
Makes me feel old.
You know what it is.
They coached half of them.
They communicate with this.
They
don't have conversations like you and I are having right now. They're in the same room texting each other.
Yeah.
So I got to go out there with this right now. It's been on my head for the last 15 minutes. How many episodes, George?
About 200.
This is the first time we've ever revealed where we worked.
Say again?
This is the first time we've ever revealed where we worked.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, and this will be the last time. Because of department policy, we will never mention it again. But you opened the door, so we kind of jumped in on
it.
Okay. Yeah, we are kind of serious sometimes, aren't we?
I mean, when we do interviews, we take pride in it because we're idiots.
Absolutely.
Our normal show, we're complete morons. What are some of the... So you come into the sheriff's office, you see some of the things, like you said, you buy the dive van, you're getting your feet wet. What are some of the things that immediately needed your attention, that you felt needed your attention?
Oh, man. I don't even know where to start. I think it's everything was done the same way for so long. The inability to change that. That was the biggest mountain to climb. How we interview people, how people get assigned the details, how people get promoted, who can be on the board, who can't be on the board, how we hire people, the questions that were asked, all that was looked at, revamped, and changed from the bottom up. It was slow, but if you look now at at all the different bosses, 85% of the bosses at least are different right now. And that hasn't happened in a long time here. And I think it's a testament to the rank and file and the people that are there. I kept it inside this time around because, what I mean by that is I want different ideas, different perspectives. And then I saw that as a retiree, you're a free agent. You can leave whenever you want. I needed a little bit more continuity. And so I decided this time around, we're going to go from within. And I showed you that picture earlier, which is kind of astonishing, but I think that's fate. I think, this organization is made up of all of us. We all need to have a little ownership. My biggest pushback, or of course, the folks that were unwilling to look at things differently and have a different perspective. One of the first things I started was having staff meetings at the conference room. The previous administration had it in the office, and they only had your executive staff, which are your division heads, not me. I says, I want the training people there. I want the number twos in each section there. I want the detectives there. I want the warden, the assistant warden, the superintendent there. I've even invited some of the lieutenants from both sides to sit. Everybody knows what's going on where we're at the same table. And then we talk about the problems and issues that we have last week and where we're looking at for next week in May. And they get tired of me talking about it. But in May, we start talking about the budget for next year.
Right.
They're like, well, Sheriff, that's not like, we need to talk about the budget. So we immediately, now everybody that the department head within the sheriff's office knows exactly what's going on in everybody else's budget because we're all talking about it at the same. Right now, we're going through policy for everyone. We're all talking about it. That's something that wasn't really done in the past. And again, it gives that sense of ownership. I don't have all the answers, and then when you have new leadership too in place, that's a learning curve with itself. For example, I am not going to admonish somebody in front of other people when I'm trying to have them understand and learn on their own. I'll talk to them in a room in private and tell them you're running out of passes. but I am going to have them because they're leaders for a reason. And before they come in and talk about an issue and a problem, I would hope that they did the research. If I have to do the research, it's probably not going to be a good conversation because there's so many things that I'm responsible for and doing. I can't do it all. I need people that think on their feet, people that know the job. One of the first things I learned in the Marine Corps many, many, many years ago when I was a gunnery sergeant was that if you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, you're going to be just fine. And so that's one of the big key things that I always try to do is I try to listen to people. I'm not always right. But if I wanted a table of people that always agree with me, then I don't need any of you. I need people to have different perspectives. I need people to have a different thought process. And I need to know from the rank and file, those folks that are now in positions of authority that came from the trenches like me. I was always in the trenches. One point I left out because I've just thought about it is, what you said. What would you get out by? What is it that why did you want to be the sheriff? One of the biggest things that I had an opportunity to do is to change all the wrong that I saw in my careers, whether it's the Marine Corps, the state police. I had a second chance to do. No one gets that, and to sit at a chair where I can make decisions like that, which I never had. I was so wrong when I said, "Oh my God, I don't have a boss anymore." Yeah, I was so wrong.
No, you got all bosses.
I got 185,000 bosses.
That's it.
But that's something I saw. I saw what was wrong within the state police. I saw what was wrong within the Marine Corps. I saw what was wrong in the corporate world. And one thing I learned from the corporate world is how they looked at us and law enforcement. That 5 years was incredible. No more placards. I had to wait online like everybody else. When I went to court, because I still went to court, and the different police agencies, New York City, the precincts are their own individual police departments. They're not all the same. So it was an incredible experience. And I was able to win this election and get reelected. And I was able to change things that I saw that were wrong. I got a second chance at a career that most people don't get.
Have you ever been sitting in that chair and you made a decision, and then now you're sitting back and you go, Trooper Figueroa would have wanted to kick my ass. Do you know what I mean? Like in hindsight, you're like, me when I was a trooper and I was in the trenches, I would not have agreed with this. And
Right.
maybe changed your thought process a little bit?
So I've always been.
Or is that an internal dialogue before you make decisions?
I've always been true to myself. But in life, we all have different roles. And there are certain things that you have to be able to live with that decision. These are life-changing decisions when you promote somebody, when you demote somebody, when you put discipline on somebody. Decisions that are not easy for me. I don't think any leader says that those decisions are easy. If they are, then they're in the wrong line of work. There's a lot of thought that goes to it, and there's a lot of input that I hear from others. Ultimately, I make the decision. Does it have to be? Am I wrong sometimes? Yes.
Oh,
I'll give you an example.
Right?
I promoted a guy because I didn't want the rubber stamp all the time, and it turned out to be a bad promotion. But I did it because they already determined, the powers that be within an organization determined who's going to be the next lieutenant, for example.
Right.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to change this, and I'm going to let the underdogs in that part of my office know that they have a chance here with me now. And I did it, and I promoted that individual, and he was great at first. Things happen. And life happens. Right. And sometimes my decisions, I learn from them as well. I mean, what's experience? But decisions that you did wrong,
right.
That's experience.
The only thing that's perfect is hindsight. Because
sure.
Look back,
but you know what I was trying to do, though, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Listen, shake up, and it wasn't shake up just for the sake of shake up. It was shake up to show that, hey, this isn't going to be the same status quo.
Exactly, and that was the purpose of that.
Right.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
when you're sitting in that chair, right? How much of you is police, and how much of your job? Not you. How much of your job is police, and how much is politician? Because I'm sure, and like I saw you the other day, and somebody said to me, I said, listen, if you're answering this honestly, it has to vary, right? Because there's going to be days you need to put your politician self on and you need to go address people. And there's going to be days that you want to be a police and you don't agree with the politics side of it. So roughly, how much of it is police versus politician? In a perfect world, you go 50-50, but I mean...
No. It's not. I'm not a cop anymore. It's terrible. I'm not a cop anymore. I'm defending this profession. Especially the last 5 years, because I know the goodness of what we do. Politics plays a role, and this is a political position. Typically apolitical as a sheriff. I try to stay clear of certain hot button issues that have nothing to do with the office. Somebody would call up and ask me about, certain things, like they're putting up this new business and it's going to affect the area. I mean, you need to get up against it, but it doesn't have anything to do with the office of sheriff. So I'm probably not going to get involved. The truth is, we have just went through the politicization of this profession the last 5 years. I've never seen it like this. I don't think anybody saw this coming. And not just the sheriff's office, but the state police, the FBI, every law enforcement entity you can think of, one way or the other, has been politicized. And our jobs is to make sure that we're true to what we said we're going to do, and that is to be peacekeepers and uphold the law. Whether you agree with that law or not, there's some laws that I can tell you that I'm like, why do they do that? That doesn't make sense. But I'm not a lawmaker. Our job is to uphold the law. If somebody wants to complain about the law, they need to complain to the people that made the laws. One thing I will do is I'll take a trip up to Albany and say, listen to us before you make this law. And I'm going to tell you why. And having those conversations. One quick, point on that. When they passed, bail reform, and they were talking about qualifying offenses, they were going to leave A1 felony, which is the highest charge in the state of New York, off. Dealing or possession of drugs. I told you I did almost 20 years in narcotics. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? So I had an opportunity to speak to Speaker Hasty. Never met him before, up at his conference room. And I explained to him, when I was an investigator in New York City, the biggest user city in the country, and we would stop somebody with, $500,000 of drug money in the trunk of the car or 50 kilos in the trunk of the car. The guy that was driving is a schmuck. He's not the big guy. Somebody's paying him to do that. You think he wants to spend a night in jail?
Right.
No,
he does not.
So he's going to tell me where, who, and what, where, and when, because he doesn't want to spend a night in jail. And that gives me the tools that I need to stop that flow of drugs from coming into whose community? Whose community? Poor people's community,
Right.
communities that look like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, and they did take it off. And I'm not saying I'm the only one that was up there to say there were a lot of DAs that were there, but those are the things that I can do when it comes to certain laws that they just did it again with clean slate, the clean slate law. They left A1s off, and I'm like, well, why would you do that? Most of the folks that are bringing that stuff in here, whether it's Mexico, the Dominicans, the Colombians, don't live here, and they get arrested. You give them an appearance ticket, or after 3 years their record gets clean. They're just going to do the same thing all over again. They're not from here,
Right.
and the stuff stays in our communities, and we have a big fight on our hands with the influx of drugs. The demand that this country has is at this point seems to be unstoppable. That's why they're sending this stuff here, because it's unstoppable. And so, yes, it's a very political job. I do my part, but mainly I stay in my lane relating to criminal justice laws and criminal justice, the enforcement of it. And that's what I try to do. But yes, it can be, I'm no longer a cop. I wish I was, but I'm not.
So you've done some things to combat the opiate crisis. You started your Oracle program. And then, we spoke a little bit off the air before you came on, and there's a hot button issue right now that was in the front page of the Freeman with the Samadhi Village. You're on this end trying to get people, hey, we're not going to run you through the same thing all the time. Arrest, 30 days, arrest again, arrest. You're trying to go like, hey, you were arrested for this. You have a drug problem. We're finding them rehabs and things with the Oracle program. But then you have on this hand, this village that's supposed to be doing the right things, but we're finding out there's wrong things. Is that conflicting as a sheriff to deal with? Like, you're trying to help people on one side, and one side seems like it's helping, but where these type of programs tax communities is when your ambulances are going there on a routine basis to deal with overdoses, which you're trying to, avoid over here. So how do you combat that?
That's a great question. I'm going to uphold the law, and there's still laws in the books with selling and possessing drugs. Since I've been here, we've been focusing on the supply side of it. But I still have an obligation when somebody dies to investigate. I'm going to investigate. And if somebody does something wrong and violated the state laws, that's somebody's mother, daughter, brother, sister that died of an overdose. And I'm not going to speak to their, what their protocols are over there at Samadhi. Everybody has a different definition of harm reduction. We have the MAT program, Medical Assistant Treatment Program in the jail. Oracle goes out and gives fentanyl strips. We have boxes on the rail trails, to put syringes in so people don't trip on them and all that. Those are certain forms of, our Oracle really is part of a plan of harm reduction, but again, the definition is a little bit different. And we are a referral service to get people into rehab. More importantly, not just those individuals that get them into rehab, but the family members that are affected with that stigma of someone that's in their family that has that issue. And there's so many of us that have family members that have that issue. And are they true criminals because they're supporting their habits? That's debatable. I mean, if you're going to commit a crime, you're still going to be held liable for it. But I'm going to tell you about a trip that I went down to New York City, which is like the epicenter of the opioid epidemic, and tell you about my personal conflict about how things are done. Ultimately, there's a different way in how, like I said earlier, harm reduction is explained. So we took a trip down to what's called the Opioid Prevention Center down in New York City. Mind you, I told you I did 20 years in the narcotics field. I lived through the crack epidemic. I saw so many people and how they were treated. And I know I sat as the vice chairman of the Drug Enforcement Committee for the National Sheriff's. The DEA tells us all the drugs, how they're coming in, and how we're inundated. We have a demand problem here in our country. We need to figure out a way how to stop the demand. So anyway, we go down to this opioid prevention center, and I found out about them because I was down at the RX Illicit Drug Summit down in Atlanta. And there was an NYPD chief who was there, and there was a gentleman by the name of Sam Rivera who is in recovery and runs this program. And I had a lot of mixed feelings about that because I've been doing this law enforcement job of mine for so many years. Like, I can't think that far outside the box. So anyway, we take a couple of vans. There's a lot of elected officials. There's the people from all sides. There's us that we're more of a referral service than anything else. And then you have like the Ryan House. They believe in abstinence. See, not everyone has the same head size. So everyone has a different way to recovery. And this has been such a huge epidemic that we have to look at different ways to stop it. And remember, I said a minute ago, the demand is an issue. So we go down there, and it's in Harlem. And as soon as we pull down the street, there's 3 police cars and an ambulance. And I'm like, great. What the heck are we walking into? So in the front, my police hat went on because I see it's like 10 people there. And I'm like, they don't look like you're, outstanding citizens. You read people, when you've done this job for a while. So we go in and we had to go use the bathroom because it was a 2.5 hour ride from Kingston. And we go into this one room, and there's literally a person having an overdose right in front of me. And I'm like, is this guy all right? And there's a young guy, they go, he's fine. And I'm like, okay. So I go use the bathroom. The gentleman that was with me looks like he saw a ghost because his whole life flashed in front of him when he saw this guy having an overdose because he's in recovery. And, I made sure he was all right and, outstanding member of our community. It was shocking to me, too, to see that. Later on, I found out that young guy was a doctor. So they have doctors and nurses at this place. And he had obviously taken something, and he was probably in the midst of an overdose, but the doctor was watching him. I just didn't know. We were just using the bathroom. So we go upstairs and we talk to Mr. Rivera for about an hour. I had some pretty tough questions, about what he was doing. And one of the tough questions that I asked is, like, I understand. He goes, well, what is it that he says to me, what is it that I'm doing wrong? I'm like, I'm not bringing the drugs in. They're bringing the drugs in. They're buying them out in the streets. Do you want them having overdoses at the Wendy's bathroom or the McDonald's bathroom or at the car wash? You want them in alleys? They're not going to treat them at a hospital because they're drug users and they get treated like subhumans. So here we treat them. And I really I understood where he was coming from to a certain point. But my question to him was then, so what are you doing to actually stop it? How are you going to stop that behavior? Is it just you're going to put them all here and hide it so nobody sees it? Like, what is it that, and he looked at me and he said, how many times have these folks said they're going to quit? And they don't quit. There are family members that are dropped off here because they know at the end of the day, they're alive when they come pick them up. Because they're not going to stop until they hit rock bottom. It's up to them to decide that. It kind of hit a chord with me in a way. But the trip got even dicier.
And I'm having trouble, like you said, with thinking that far outside the box because...
Well, it gets better.
To me, it's like, it's a glorified, legalized flophouse for addicts.
Right. But what he said is true. He's not really breaking the law. The individuals are breaking the law coming in. But it gets better. So I go downstairs, and there's this huge room. There's got to be 200 folks. Again, my head's on a swivel. And then there's a back room where there's booths. And there's a nurse, or older lady. I don't know if she was a nurse or not, but there were clean syringes, test strips. And as I walk in there, there's a guy shooting up right there. And I'm saying to myself, should I arrest this guy right now? And she looks at me. She sees the despair, the pause as I walked in the door. And she looks at me and she says, I know what you're thinking. But at the end of the day, he's going to be alive. And at some point, he's going to stop. And she said the same thing. How many times people say they're going to quit and they don't quit? And she says to me, 2 of my kids died of overdoses. They were hardworking individuals with college degrees, and they're dead now. And this is my way of saving people's lives. And there was a sign on the wall that said, "We're saving people's lives." So yeah, it's conflicting a little to me, but are they actually going to stop? There were programs there that if they decided to stop, they were going to take them and put them on a program to actually stop, whether it was abstinence or methadone. And so they had a plan. They were very organized. I got to admit, they were very organized. But what they're not allowing, though, is people buying and selling in the place. They're not allowing that. They're not allowing people to, it's the Department of Health is there. It's not certified per se, but they're watching it. So there are some things, and here's the biggest part of it, that when I go back upstairs and the NYPD chief is there with a captain, lieutenant, and she says to me, she goes, "Our overdose rate is down by 50%, and our petty crime, which is a telltale sign of opioid substance abuse disorder in the area, is down by 20%. Say what you want, but numbers don't have opinions. Who am I to say if it's going to save somebody's life not to at least have an open mind about it? Am I there? Am I conflicted? Yeah, I'm very conflicted. I'm not there. But after listening to the DEA's, prognosis of the country and the drugs that are coming in, and the 400, or I think it was like 200,000 people that died of overdoses last year, we got to do something because what we're doing isn't working.
No, listen, I understand that. But being a military guy, just like, could you imagine being in the Marines and you don't put your gun back together, your weapon back together correctly, and they go, well, he'll get there eventually.
Yeah, but this is a little bit different. I'm sure you guys had the same thing when, especially the VA. The VA was the biggest pusher of oxycodone. And then when they changed the law, they cut them all out, and a lot of people died. A lot of people became heroin addicts.
Well,
so we're still
the big
suffering
pharmacy
from that
with the pills in
Absolutely.
the 90s, right? So,
well, that's still part of the problem. That was still part of the problem. What led us to where we are with these users now. These aren't. Some of them are regular street users. Others are strictly, I hurt my back, they cut me off, and now I got to get some sort of fix. We're still there, and I don't have all the answers. I'm conflicted, but I'm also, being in this field for so long, knowing how many people have died. If something works, I'm not gonna, and it's gonna save somebody's life. I'm not gonna stand in the way.
Correct. Like you've.
But I am conflicted.
Right. You've clearly come up with a program. Right. But do you feel the police side of you? Do you feel, hey, we stopped that supply coming in here. We stopped those big supplies coming in here. That's a way to drastically reduce.
Oh, we're still going to do our fundamental regular police work. Like I said, we had the biggest seizure of drugs and guns 2 years in a row here, which is kind of scary because we never saw that amount of drugs coming in here. We've never seen that before. We're talking about pressed pills that had fentanyl in them. And then they make it look like they're like regular prescription pills. That's some scary stuff. And it came across, that was actually mailed in from across the border from Arizona. The other part of that, we had like 12 kilos, came out of one of the southern states in the Gulf. So we've never had that issue here. And to see that here, it's eye-opening as well. I'm still a traditional cop. We're still going to do that. We're not going to get involved in that type of harm reduction, if you will. I think if it's going to happen, because it's already happening in our county in a way that to me needs to be a little bit more organized. The medical professionals have to be the final determination on this. Right. I'm not a medical professional.
Structure and organization seems to really be the key on the whole plan. If it's that organized,
it was very organized down there, even though again, I'm conflicted.
Right.
I really am. It's not something I'm used to seeing. It's
With
not
how
something.
you probably walked in and said, "There's like 19 busts in here alone," from what's going on. But
I mean,
again, you gotta.
it was tough. It was tough to see. It was tough to see. And there were people from all walks of life there. It wasn't just all African Americans or Latinos. There were Asians, there were white people. I'm sitting there going like,
it's a complete mixed bag. What we see is a complete mixed bag.
I mean, you see it more than me in the jail, but I'm going to tell you that when I actually, feel bad for the human race when I see that. I'm like, how did we get to this point that we're even talking about this? How do we get here? The answer that we all have to come up with is, how do we get out of it? And demand is huge. The supply side, we're always going to do what we can. And I've always been a firm believer that the most of the hits that we've hit are maybe 10, 15% of what's coming into this country. The bad guys know that if they ship stuff to the United States Postal Service, that's the easiest way. And if they can track any of their, whether it's UPS or FedEx, and if it doesn't get to where it's supposed to go, they're not going to go pick it up.
Right.
So think of that. Think of that for a second. 50,000 packages going in.
Well,
and only like 10
right
of them
here, this changed the world.
Absolutely.
Because you can communicate and with
Absolutely.
phones and all these other things.
Absolutely.
Where you would never. Before that, for me to talk to you in Arizona, I'd have to have an
Right.
actual number, meet
Right.
you, something.
Right.
Now,
Absolutely.
I don't even have to know who you are.
Social media, and it's
Right.
encrypted.
Yeah.
And the way they're bringing it in, all different types of ways, we're inundated. And we need to stop the demand. Supply is going to always be there, but the only reason why they're doing it is for the money. They can always grow the drugs again. We need to seize more cash, go after their assets, and it's going to be a tough road ahead. But I think if we all do it as the community has to help us too. We can't do it alone. They know more what's going on in their neighborhoods than we do. They're not going to just tell us.
Right.
And so when it affects them and their families, they will, because somebody died. Just like when somebody dies with an overdose, it's a death investigation. We're going to have to do what we have to do.
Shifting gears a little bit, like, what are some of the more sophisticated criminal problems that Ulster County is faced with currently?
I guess
like, I know there's cyber stuff, right? There's been cyber attacks. There's been things like this. Is there anything that kind of shocked you? You're like, I would never think that was up here or that was here.
Well, no, I've always known. I worked in the Special Investigations Unit. Ulster County is the southernmost county of the Northern District. The Northern District encompasses parts of Vermont and New England and New York, mainly the capital districts, Schenectady, Albany. There's a lot of stuff going on up there. People aren't going to come down here from the feds to work down here that much because their hands are busy up there. And Orange County is the northernmost county of the Southern District. So when I worked with the state police in the Special Investigations Unit, right before I retired, I had a case in Newburgh. It was a pretty big case. And I'm telling my boss, I'm like, these are big. This is a big target here. Yeah, Juan, it's not a big target. It's because you live up there. You want to work up there. And I'm like, no, this guy is a real target. I'm telling you. And when you have people that live in New York City or in Westchester, the likelihood of getting them to work up here with the special training that's required to do it, it's going to be tough. Wiretapping, eavesdropping warrants, surveillance, counter surveillance, all that stuff is a lot of work. And to get people to come to this area of the Hudson Valley to work, it's not an easy feat because of the split. One of the most surprising thing to me is these ghost guns and how easily they are to be made. And it's been an issue. Matter of fact, I was invited to go to Dutchess County Sheriff's Office on Monday. I think Senator Schumer is putting together a grant for local law enforcement to combat that. Even legitimate businesses, I was surprised with. You go, we're doing a gun buyback program, and we hired a company to destroy the guns, and it says right on there that they're going to destroy the guns. But what is a gun? Well, it's anything that's serialized. That's the gun. So the pistol grips, and if it's a barrel, they were reselling that stuff. And I'm like, they weren't telling us. They said they were making their money by melting the gun, that metal.
Right. You would take the metal.
Exactly.
Right.
So I stopped using them when I found that out. I'm like,
They were just disassembling and then reselling.
I'm like, what?
Right.
So
right, you take a firing pin out, and now it's
and it was one of our local reporters that brought it to my attention. But and kudos to her. But the truth is that we're in a unique time in our country, and we have a lot of problems that we face. The local issues are just a microcosm of what's going on nationally. And I think if we look at solving our own issues locally, because we can't always depend on the federal or state government to do it, but it's got to be a partnership with our citizens that they need to trust us. If we can't build that trust, then all this is for naught, because then we're just, not only are we fighting amongst each other, our folks that are trying to make money off of the misery of drugs and guns are going to win.
Yeah. That's one of those.
Man, you guys are really serious.
Well, I try to give Highland some time to move in here.
No. And it's we do have a couple of fun segments to wind up with.
Okay.
Anything else you want to hit on?
Well, I want to know, like, there's a couple things. You're 1 year into your current term, right? You got 3 years to go.
Right.
A, do you feel like you have more to give? And B, if not, do you have any other office that you'd like to hold? Anything else that you maybe possibly? There's always been grumblings. We're going to see you down in D.C.
No.
That's so
the rumor killer, right here. Where's his mouth?
I retired from 2 jobs. What do I want headaches like that for? I have the best.
You're young in a political game.
What? Listen,
You're still a diaper in the center.
I'm just saying.
This is the pinnacle of my career. This job, I'm honored to have it and work with such great people. But I didn't know anything about it, but I know now. It's humbling, and it really is. It's my life's honor to do what I'm doing right now. I have no intention of leaving anytime soon. If that's what you're asking, I'm not. But I also do believe, though, that at some point all of us have to learn how to pass the torch, whenever that time is. And you don't want to be. Marine Corps is a prime example. When I was running the physical fitness test, I didn't want to be that guy doing the funky chicken.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The guy at the end is doing this.
Yeah.
I became that guy. And as soon as I became that guy, I'm like, that's it. It's over.
Right.
And I retired. And I surprised everybody that I says, no, I'm done. I'm retired. And, I quit smoking cigarettes after that. And I started running again. I started getting in shape again. And I'm like, damn, I could have done a couple more years.
Hindsight, right?
I don't think we'll be able to drive through our hometown here if we don't mention recently promoted to the rank of Under Sheriff Sorority's Zone, James Mullen. We love him, and everybody feels he made a great choice there. Speak a little bit about Jimmy.
Jimmy Mullen has got so much potential, and he wants more responsibilities. He went to the National Academy and graduated. I showed you that picture earlier. I got Maggio in him, right? The Colonel Maggio was also a newly promoted colonel from Delaware County. He's got a lot of experience in corrections. It was time to get younger at some of the leadership positions in the office. All of us in positions of authority, if we're putting all the apples in one basket, shame on us. It's not good for any organization. So training the future is something that I learned many, many, many years ago. I got an old boss named Rich DeSimone, CW05, who's a retired fire department guy, but he was my boss in the Marine Corps. He was tough to work for. I thought he hated my guts, actually, but at the end of my career, I realized what a smart man he was, and all the trials and tribulations that he put me through was for a reason, and it was to take over his job. And so I learned from that, and I said, you know what? It's time to, look forward. With the stepping down of Eric was a great undersheriff. I mean, a lot of people know it's just a typical Marine Corps move. You get a number two that's going to be fire, and everyone's focused on him. So I was able to do my job, and that's exactly what he did. He took all the incoming, and I was able to do my job. That portion, because no one knew me, that portion of that part of my career in the sheriff's office ended. And I said, okay, now it's time to kind of prepare for the future. Whether it's, 8 years from now or 4 years from now, I think it's important to have young people with new ideas in positions of authority. And I thought it was a perfect opportunity to do it. And he ran to jail and gave some people hell over there. But that was the reason. I did that on purpose. Yes, that's exactly why I did it. I did it because I want him to understand the biggest part of the office is the jail. And if you don't understand that, you're not going to stand anything in this office. And so he did it, and he did a great job. And so when the under stepped down, I asked him to be the undersheriff. And I asked, after the interviews with the superintendent, I asked, the only problem with that is, and another Marine Corps saying is, would you rather have a dog you kick to get something, or would you rather have a dog that you got to hold by the collar? Well, now I got about 4 of them. They're dragging me all over the place. But I'm okay with that.
Working with Tony for 20 plus years, he's always been that guy. He is the go-getter. So we're lucky to have him in.
Yeah, we need go-getters. We need change and different ideas and perspectives, and he brings a lot to the table. He's done a lot of different things within the organization.
And it was huge for the staff to see one of their own up there. That for once we felt the connection, because it's been quite a while since there was one of our own up there. Listen, you're making moves that make me think this is your final run here. But if this is,
notice he said 4 or 8.
Yeah,
so he left the door open.
Correct.
I might do one more. I don't know.
However it plays out, when your run finishes up, what do you want the people of Ulster County to say about Juan Figueroa? What do you want them to say is his greatest accomplishment?
I guess what I always tell people is I'm just going to do the best that I can. I don't do this for the accolades. I mean, it's not why I did this. I did it because it gave me a second chance in my career. That's one of the biggest reasons. And to give something back to a place that's given me everything, and that's Ulster County. So at the end of the day, I just want people to say that I did my job. That's it.
Kept us safe.
That's not safe. That's for real, man.
No, I'm saying that's a big thing for a sheriff. Like, hey, listen, under this sheriff, we were safe. He kept.
It's a feeling that encompasses everything.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That you know what? I want to hear that.
There you go.
Well, I the truth is that we kept the peace here for the last 5 years with everything that was thrown at all of us in the county, not just law enforcement, but all of us. And I think that's a testament to the people of this county, the people that work in the sheriff's office, that we were able to, I think we're past that corner of the understanding why people dislike law enforcement, and at the same time trying to understand how we got there. We all have stories. We know people that treated people terribly, but we also, I realize there's nothing wrong with looking at the mirror and making adjustments, because we've been doing adjustments since the beginning of time. I got into the police car when I first became the sheriff, and when I looked at the car, it's a damn spaceship. I mean, when I was a trooper, all I had was a radio in the car and a radar unit. That's it. Not anymore. There's body cams, there's computers, there's printers, there's, hardwired flashlights, dash cams. I mean, it's a spaceship.
They are. They definitely are. And your entire term so far has been one after another. Like, right?
It's not stop.
then then bail reform, then the whole every
God.
time you're just getting another.
Oh, it was, boy, you talk about thrown in a freaking frying pan. It was crazy the first 4 years, and it's funny. It's like every week there's a new theme. There's a new theme.
Yeah. What are we doing this month, guys?
It's a new theme, but I cannot be luckier to have the people, the men and women that work in that building, that understand, and that's the reason why we have the staff conferences with so many people there. I want them to understand where I'm coming from. I don't want them to think I'm doing it for political reasons or for any other reason other than what our mission is. And we're the peacekeepers of the county. That's really what we are. It's a unique office. I'm not appointed, by the governor or the town council. This is the only office that's an elected law enforcement position. The only one is that of the sheriff. And what a unique opportunity it has truly been for me, for an office that's been around since 1663, to be one of the sheriffs. You guys see the pictures in the hallway?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I look at that picture like, I'm gonna be like, what the hell happened there? This guy doesn't have mutton chops. Where's his hat?
We might have found the next stage of his life here. Keeping the peace with Juan Figueroa. On 24 Cross Media.
Yeah. All right, we'll play a little. We have this little game we like to play. Basically, it's called Over or Under. We're going to give you a term, and then you tell us if you think it's overrated or underrated.
Oh, boy.
All right.
Here we go. Sounds like fun.
All right, Over and Under, brought to you by the Law Office of Brian Duran, 339-4313. And if you go in and see Brian, he is a bankruptcy specialist. You get $100 off if you mention the Outlaw Blitz podcast.
And tonight's video brought to you by
Moranti Plumbing and Oil.
All right. Now we got a sponsor.
I always mess that
Hey,
up.
I know that guy.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, number one, electric vehicles.
Overrated.
Overrated.
Well, we have no infrastructure for this stuff yet. I think it's going to happen, though. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Once the infrastructure is in place, it's going to happen. I got to tell you this because this is important. I was coming back. What the hell was I at? I was at some conference for training sheriffs in Michigan, and a guy picked me up in a Tesla to take me to the airport, an Uber, and he wasn't even driving. It's like his hands weren't on the steering wheel. I'm like,
oh yeah.
I'm like, who's driving this car? He goes, I was blown away by that.
Autopilot.
So listen, it's
they have
electric vehicles are coming, and the truth is, I do believe that we need to change. The major issues with the planet Earth, and I believe in climate warming. I do. And look at the summer. Look at the winters we've been having.
Who's complaining?
I don't know about you. I like the snow.
I like
the snow.
Are you a skier?
Do I look like a skier?
No, not at all. Not even a little bit. The only good thing is if you ski, the fall's not very far.
No, I like the snow though. I like the snow, but once the infrastructure's in place, that's what happened. That's got to happen first. I mean, there's so many issues with them. When we got that one coal spill, the batteries were frozen. They couldn't go anywhere. I can't do that in law enforcement.
Right.
At one point, you had an electric vehicle, right? Or do you still?
I have a hybrid.
A hybrid.
It's a hybrid. It's a plug-in.
Because I remember we'd see you walking up every day, and I'm like, where's he going?
Yeah, I felt like I had to get a cab to go get the car.
Yeah.
But where is he? He called the Uber to get thrown over his car.
Yeah.
It's coming, though. It's going to come.
All right.
All cars are going to be electric, but I think until the infrastructure is in place, they're a little overrated.
Okay. Number two, daylight savings. Overrated or underrated?
Again, maybe because I'm old and I'm used to it. I'm fine with it. I think I think it's underrated. I think we need it. I don't have an issue with it.
You like the extra hour of sleep?
It's something that we've been doing since I was a kid. I don't see the reason to change it. I just, they did it.
Don't fix it.
Well, I mean, they did it to have more daytime for harvesting. And what's the big deal with changing it? Why should we change it?
I just like the hours better. More advanced. I can't wait for next Sunday. You know what's next Sunday, right?
It's earlier this year
Yeah,
for
it
some
is way
reason.
early.
Yeah.
And what's weird is my daughter lives in England, and we're 5 hours apart. But they're not changing theirs till March 31st. So it's weird. So for like 3 weeks, it's going to be only 4 hours apart. You would think like the whole world would do it at the same time.
Right.
So
You celebrated New Year's twice this year.
I did. It was cool. We were
Oh,
on
wow.
FaceTime with her, and when England did their New Year's and then ours. It was
That's
pretty
great.
wild. It's pretty cool. All right, number 3, country living.
I think it's underrated.
Oh, we were guessing on this one.
We were.
I love the country. I think people need to figure out how beautiful nature is. We have the river. We got the people. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that because then everybody's going to move
Everybody's
up
going
here.
to come up. Yeah.
Too late, by the way.
I absolutely I love the country, and I worked in New York City for all those years, but there was nothing better when I was at my cabin up in Delaware County because I had a cabin up there. Show up there 2-3 o'clock in the morning. My family's already up there, and I was like, I was in a concrete jungle like 4.5 hours earlier.
Right.
And now I'm sitting and listening to the birds chirping and the turtles walking across toward the pond. It's beautiful.
That's awesome. All right, number 4, Catskill Mountain Moonshine.
I love it.
Yeah.
What about the owner of Catskill Mountain?
Well, I don't know about that guy.
That guy might be a little overrated,
He's
but
a
the
little
moonshine place
Moonshine's
is underrated.
good. That's underrated. People need to really. I've been there a few times, and I'm joking about.
Did you have our drink?
Which one did you have?
It's
The
called the
Outlaw.
Saugerties Outlaw.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, there was a drink that I had there that tastes like apples. You know which was that one?
Nah, he's got so many good drinks.
But it was really.
We were out to dinner. This is a true story. We were out to dinner.
Now I'm going to look up the Outlaw.
2019.
2019. We were in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, out to dinner with Louie, and the idea was born for Catskill Mountain Moonshine. He's like, George, we could do this. I'm telling you. He had this whole idea. I said, listen, there better be an outlaw drink on that menu. If there's not, I'm going to come at you with a baseball bat and take your knees out.
So it happened, and there's an outlaw drink.
Yeah, and there's an outlaw drink.
I'm going to have to check it out next time I'm there.
It's a shot.
It's great.
It's really good.
It's first of all, it's a great place. I love Louis and his wife. I mean,
And he does that big Marine.
yeah,
bash every year.
he worked with me in the Marine Corps. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Just don't tell him any stories. I won't bring up any stories.
Listen, I did my research before you were hired. So
There you go.
before you were elected.
So you knew. I mean, because if you know Louis,
Well, I asked him.
he knows how I operate.
Right.
He
I
knows.
asked him. I did. I said, listen, just what do you think? And he gave me the straight, and I was like, all right, I can live with that.
Because he knows I'm going to look out for the rank and file. That's who I was, and that's who I am.
You know what? The biggest compliment for me that he gave you is he said, when we went to war, we never lacked for anything. Juan had us equipped with everything we ever needed, and that told me a lot.
Well,
that you made sure your guys had the equipment to do their job.
Absolutely.
And he said he was the only Puerto Rican from the Bronx who was a Met fan.
Yeah. yeah.
You know, I told you what
fan.
that was. My father was a Yankee fan.
You had to be the rebel.
I had
then.
to. I'm like, no, you know what? I'm gonna be a Met fan. I know it's in Queens, but I'm gonna be a Met fan.
There you go.
All right, and last but not least, number 5, the Ulster County Sheriff's Office.
It's totally underrated.
This is your chance to brag about your office.
I wish I knew what I was getting into when I first did this, but the great men and women that work in that office and everything that we went through the last 5 years, which feels like it's 20 years, but the everything that we all went through together. My first weekend, I'll never forget as long as I live. One of our members was heading home, and these two people were crossing the road, and I came out that night. That was my first weekend, so I was like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, what? You know, we have some great men and women that persevered through tough times, and we're real lucky to have all of you folks. I'm blessed. I'm lucky. When I asked you to do things that we're not used to doing, yeah, there was some pushback, but eventually we got it done, and we're so far ahead of everybody else that's doing it because it's mandated by law that it's incredible to see. What I'm trying to do now is to make sure you guys get out of the bubble that we're in here in Ulster County and see what's going on in other correctional facilities around the country, which I have been doing. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to send you guys, but the work that you folks do for this county is totally underrated. It's just totally underrated. And I hope that when contract time comes around, people take note of what this organization has been through the last 5 years and what you have produced and what you're doing to make the necessary changes that people that pay our salaries want. And whether it's the Ignite program, whether going back to getting people adults GEDs, or treating people humanely, whether it's changing the phone service or the food contract or the all that stuff plays a role in how we deal with the people that we're responsible for in the facility. But we're much bigger than that. We're all in the different teams that are in the office. Whether it's I don't know if you guys remember this, but I made everybody wear the same uniform.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of pushback for that one, but I did that because I felt like they were two different agencies when we're not. We're one. The leadership that's in place now, that's going to continue to move forward, and I hope you guys will take the test, because we need good, sound people that have the experience like you do in positions of authority for those younger generations that are coming through. And that's really what it's about. It's about at the end of the shift going home safely, like you said, all the equipment, all the training, which we doubled the training budget for corrections. The biggest part of the office, and it was the smallest part of training. I'm like, what? And actually, that was Mullen that brought it up. I give Mullen a lot of credit for that. But I'm humbled, and more importantly, I'm proud of the men and women that work at the sheriff's office through thick and thin. We're dysfunctional, like most families are, but we're a family.
We put the fun in dysfunctional.
Say again?
I said we put the fun in dysfunctional.
But it's a lot of fun, and there's always a curveball waiting for me on Monday morning, without a doubt.
There's a curveball waiting for all three of us.
And we forgot about all the laws that changed. What about 58? That was huge. That's we can't put a criminal history on someone out in the public yet. Any small thing that you get in trouble for, which could be as slight as an administrative thing, is now that's open to public, to the court. Yeah. And so it's a unique time that we all went through together. We all did. I was lucky to happen to be at the helm. I happened to be at the helm when this happened, because I didn't see this coming. Yet we all made it through together. Not always perfect, but I think we're okay.
Nice.
As George Strait said, the weight of the badge.
Some funny stories with that one.
We watched the video. So if anybody that's watching hasn't seen it, go on YouTube and you can see Sheriff Figueroa give a really nice interview to George Strait's song. So
yeah, I'm good. I wanted him to finish up with pushing his department up.
That's right.
That
Matt Russell's included in all that.
I don't know about Manny Russell.
Right.
I love Manny.
Yeah, he's asked a million questions.
I'm sure he has. He's been blowing it up.
Sergeant Matt. We having some beers. There's been a ton of Matt Russell questions that I'm leaving off.
Listen, Matt Russell is a great Marine, and I consider him a friend.
Yes, Matt is a great friend.
And he's a character. He's a character.
He is.
But he's good people.
He's very smart,
yes.
hardworking guy, though.
Yep.
He's got a lot to give.
Yep.
Never allowed on the podcast again.
No. Yeah.
No, he killed
We can easily tell a quick Matt Russell story that you'll appreciate.
Yeah.
We get a national energy drink sponsor, and on the first episode with it, while I'm doing the first read, Matt leans into the thing and goes, penis.
Like 5 times.
Like 5
he just
times.
kept wanting to say it.
It just Matt being Matt, and this I guarantee you this is Matt chiming in right now. Yeah, it's Matt. I need a stipend for being him. Just Matt being Matt. I'm good, dude. You do your thing.
I'm good. Any parting shot? Any parting words?
I said thank you for having me on here. Honestly, I didn't know what I was gonna get into. I'm walking into a church. I'm like,
you thinking we were gonna beat you up? All week.
He's like, shit. Now we're going to the basement.
Yeah.
All right, then. So for Sheriff Figueroa and GMAC, this is Winnie. This has been the Outlaw Blitz interview podcast. And as always,